Super excited to have Luis Lewis here, not from Curb Your Enthusiasm, founder at GrowthStable, Shopify agency. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Lewis, where are you dialing in from
Yeah,
today?
I'm just outside of Pasadena, California.
Awesome. Awesome. And have
Yeah.
you been there for a long
Yeah,
time?
born and raised. Haven't gone very far. Went to college out here, high school, and worked out here, and then just really never left LA area.
Awesome. Good to know. Yeah, we did a lot of West Coast trips the last or since I started here about 8 months ago, but the last couple of weeks I've been East Coast in Canada.
Oh wow.
Attentive's conference in New York, and then the next week Shopify's conference in Toronto. So that's one of
Nice.
the reasons I haven't recorded much lately. Happy to be back in the saddle now.
Busy schedule for you, just a couple of
Yeah.
things going on, like international travel.
Yeah, just a little globe trotting here and there. Well, Lewis, again, thank you for joining. We love to start these episodes before we get into the shop talk on a personal note. So, would love to hear one or two things that you're really excited about in your personal life before we dive in.
Yeah, definitely. Number one, I'm getting married next year, so that's super excited.
Nice,
Thrilled
congrats,
about that.
Exciting. Claps a lot.
Thank you, thank you. And then just stoked for the holidays.
awesome. What? Yeah, I see you got cookies here.
Yeah.
Favorite type of cookie?
Oh man, I don't think you can go wrong with a classic chocolate chip, but I don't say no to cookies, so anything works with me.
Yeah.
Are you a baker? Do you like making cookies or you just like enjoying them and taking away of the mess of baking?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a baker, but I definitely enjoy it. And
Okay.
a house that smells like cookies is pretty impressive. So anything that has anything to do with cookies, I'm on board.
Oh, delicious. We
Yeah.
should have had cookies sent to you. Could have
Next time,
enjoyed
next
them,
time.
yeah, at the
Next,
time of the podcast.
once we get the Portos, we'll reciprocate with.
Exactly,
hmm
exactly.
Um, well, that's good. Sounds like at your house, Santa comes and eats all of the cookies. So that's. Is there anything else about the holidays? Like, do you enjoy shopping? I imagine your business picks up around the holidays, and we'll get into that in a second. But
Yeah,
yeah, maybe you could.
yeah. I think just enjoying family and friends, and then on the business side, solving that one problem that always comes up that you never expect. That's the exciting part.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great segue into growth stable. Would love to hear a little bit about your background leading up to growth stable, and then
Yeah,
more about the business today. I know, we got connected because we worked together on a new client of ours, Porto's Bakery, which we were talking about before the show. Always makes me salivate when I see their tracking page. And so that's how we got connected and we had a great conversation, Lewis. I remember the first time we talked, I was like, we have to get you on the podcast because you had a really unique perspective and I think unique offering in terms of what your agency does compared to some of the others in the ecosystem. So let's start with like the background leading up to the agency and then get into Growth Stable, if that's okay with you.
yeah. Of course, happy to. So yeah, so we'll start on the context. I had the privilege of being hired to build out an e-commerce division for Porto's Bakery. And so I did that for 5 years and then recently left. So I was the director of e-commerce there and had a great time building out a great team over there and obviously great food, which also makes the job a lot easier. And once I left, I decided that I really wanted to build out an agency that I wish I had access to when I was a director of e-commerce, which is essentially delivering a director of e-commerce or VP of e-commerce as a service. So
Mm.
essentially the equivalence of having like a board of advisors. So they're not necessarily pulling all the levers, but they're speeding up your growth so that you don't have to kind of A/B test everything under the sun. They can apply best practices and show you which services and platforms to use to get the best value to kind of get you to that goal milestone for your growth as soon as possible. So that's what we've been offering, and it's been really cool because brands are like, "Wow, I didn't know I needed that." Usually someone they're finding like a expert in one platform or one skill set, and we can kind of come on and say we've done it all for ourselves, and from the operator's standpoint, So we're not just pushing, the exciting vanity metrics, but we're like, hey, we know you have to make money at the end of the day, and we know the pressure that comes with that. So we're happy to push results with that operator kind of hat on.
Got you. Yeah, I definitely think that's unique, sort of wearing, all the hats. And it sounds like, would you say that most of your clients are leveraging you for like the full suite of what you can offer expertise and advice and consulting in? Or is it more a la carte? They sort of say, we really need help with email marketing and transactional messaging for an easy example for us.
Yeah.
Or is it more like the all encompassing, we're going to be basically the VP of e-commerce and run the show?
They reach out for an a la carte service. And then when I ask them how they're doing X, Y, and Z of the other departments, they don't think those departments are something that can be optimized. And so it becomes that full package where, they maybe come for email or paid ads. And I tell them, how's your fulfillment service? Who does your contract negotiation? And they're like, what do you mean contract negotiation? We just, do a retail pricing. So it starts off with like a la carte. And then when I share with them that there are so much room for opportunity to improve the brand, then we kind of go for that full service package.
Got it. Yeah. That's super interesting. What on that note, I'm curious, is it often that brands come to you for what you said, email and ads? And then, so like, question is, what do they normally come in for? And then what are like the 2 or 3 things that are always glaringly obvious that, when you ask them, how are you doing this today, that they're not going to have an answer, or they're going to have a shitty answer?
Sure.
Great question.
It's funny. In most cases, they don't have an answer, but to answer your question, the first thing they usually come with is email marketing or paid ads. Either they haven't done paid ads before, or maybe like their little cousin has been running their paid ads and they're looking to kind of upgrade to that next level. And then with email, they don't really know the full-fledged capability of their email program. They just know that they communicate with their customers from time to time. So that's usually who they start off with, asking for support because they internally have decided we need to kind of upgrade our services. And then you kind of talk about, how are they handling fulfillment and CX, specifically with, their relationship with their customers, which is where Malombo comes in, where they don't really expect that they need to do much more with that relationship other than getting them to place that order. And, there's not much of a conversation about, lifetime value, the extended relationship with the customer. They kind of focus on, we got someone to the site, they checked out, and let's rinse and repeat that cycle. And when I come in and say, to get to that growth that you're looking to achieve, you need to create a systematic approach to have customers come in and execute that checkout, which is obvious, but we need them to come back. We need to increase that lifetime value. If not, you're just, welcoming people into your home and then kicking them right out. And no one really wants to do that. When you kind of phrase it that way, they realize, oh, well, I think there's a little big opportunity to continue that conversation with the relationship with their customers.
Yes. Absolutely. That is super top of mind for me right now. I just did like a day-long whiteboarding session with our CEO, Yao, on Friday to put some messaging together. And we were doing some research, and I found this crazy stat that was like, I think it was in 2013, the average first purchaser lost a company, an e-commerce brand, $9 on average. Today, the average loss on first purchase is $29.
Whoa.
So it's over 3x in 10 years, less than 10 years. On the flip side, the average profit per second purchase has gone up 33% in the same time frame. So the idea of like, we are just focused on acquisition is like an absolutely failing mindset.
Antiquated for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a cycle to that, right? The companies that figure out that they can make a increase in the value, the lifetime value of a customer, then know that they can spend more on acquisition. And unfortunately, for the brands that haven't figured that out, the marketplace is going to favor people who are spending more on that first acquisition. And if they try to match it and don't have that lifetime value improvement, they're kind of a sinking ship. And that's the kind of scary part of e-commerce, where if you don't have it together and you are competing in a marketplace for the acquisition or the majority of your traffic, you have to adapt quicker than the rest of the brands. And that's where I'm excited to jump in where, if you don't have those best practices, it truly is a sinking ship. It's only a matter of time till you can't afford to acquire customers anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that stat blew my mind. And then,
Yeah.
um, on the flip side, what I thought was really interesting was the sort of like universal 3 to 1 CAC to LTV metric that everybody's aspiring to, and how, at the same while I say, strictly focusing on acquisition is a losing strategy, it's not to say that it's not completely crucial, right, to the growth and stability of your business, because you always need to be bringing in new customers. But
Mm-hmm.
while that first purchase is obviously like absolutely necessary, it's actually the second purchase that is probably more important. Any thoughts on that? Would you agree, Lewis?
I completely agree. I completely agree. And there's no way to, I don't think there's a way to truly grow a brand without getting to a point where you're, dabbling with acquisition in that marketplace. But there are so many tools that aren't being focused on to get that second purchase, right? One thing that I always talk about with the brands that I speak with is the referral programs they use, where they're such home runs. They put, like you just mentioned, $20 sunk into that first acquisition. Most customers are getting a first-time customer offering with a lot of brands, right, in e-commerce. And what I've seen is when you can offer a referral program and you offer a reward to an existing customer that matches that first-time first-time customer discount, you're in a place where you're offering a lower cost to you for an acquisition, and you have a higher chance of that customer sticking around, right? It's almost like a warm lead instead of a cold lead. You don't have to communicate as much to that referred customer because your friend, the existing customer, is doing a lot of that heavy lifting for you, right? And it's one of the tools that I use with Malomo, with the brands, is you have so much excitement built in when a customer places an order. And
Yeah.
leading up to that, all the conversation, all the marketers talk about is intent to purchase, right? How about the excitement about a purchase, right? That's what thrills me. When you get a customer to purchase, the conversation almost just started. We now have an official relationship. And if you can converse with them throughout their excitement, right? So checkout is the thrill. Oh, I made the thrill of purchasing. When's it coming? And then all those emails leading up to the delivery, which, as you guys know, the open rates are through the roof
Yeah.
because of that excitement. Also, they're not marketing, but through the roof because of the excitement of like, when's it coming? They know essentially when it's coming. You've kind of communicated that when they purchase, but they still check every status update, right? Out for delivery, the shipped one, and then delivered. If you can leverage that with the tool like you guys offer in Malomo, you can capture that excitement and leverage it to something like the referral program, which kind of enhances your acquisition model at a much lower cost than most likely what you're usually offering for a cold market like on Facebook or such. Or it also getting that second purchase from the customer. Maybe they ordered product A and they were excited and they caught their eye and they never even experienced the opportunity to purchase product B. Why not suggest product B in that moment? And all that's at that heightened sense of excitement. It's just such a great opportunity that, compared to a brand who's not leveraging something like Malomo, they may just be purchased, sent to a FedEx page,
Yep.
and we'll see you next time. And maybe next time, if there is a next time at all.
Yeah, that's 100% the experience for brands not leveraging us. Like the Shopify out of the box
Yeah.
experience is very transactional. There's no personalization, no customization, sending you to a tracking page. Lewis, whenever you want a job, man, we got you.
I was gonna say, like, so happy to hear that you also see the value in that, because like I think the excitement is the piece that it's like, oh, sometimes you have to think through, like it isn't glaring your face a lot of the times. Like you said, like marketers are always very concentrated on the intent to purchase, but then the excitement kind of gets sometimes wrapped up or lost in that. And so being able to, just hearing you talk through that, I think there's something that came to mind. And that's like the effect of like delayed gratification of like you're waiting for this package. Like it is a different experience when you're shopping online versus in retail, obviously, because retail 9 times out of 10, you're leaving the store with it, right? Like already in your hand. So you already like the timeline between when you're actually buying something and when you're when it's in your hands is a lot quicker and shorter than obviously online because it has to get shipped to you. And so being able to extend that excitement because the timeline between when you order and maybe have some of that like buyer's remorse and getting rid of those negative emotions and instead implementing like more excitement, more educational videos, cross sells, upsells, whatever it is on your post-purchase page, it is very exciting as a customer to receive that because you're like constantly reminded like, oh, this is coming, like it's like, oh, I ordered this, like I'm so excited about it. It's like extending that period of excitement.
Yeah, totally. And I think you made a great point about the negative, emotions that can, sometimes be tied to that process. These carriers can't deliver 100% on time. And so there are going to be issues that, whether it's a single percentage of failure of delivery, there will be a issue you'll run into as a brand. And what better place to counter that challenge than a custom tracking page where you can have, whether it's a pop-up chat or an easy to access button to contact your CX team, you can solve that problem in that moment rather than having the customer have to encounter the issue with the carrier, go on the carrier's page, try to communicate with the carrier, and now you're kind of handing off that relationship to a carrier who that's not necessarily their job. Your job is to build that relationship and take care of your customer. And if that small percentage of chance there is an issue, you can have a personalized, hey, if there's an issue, reach out to us, click this button. That opportunity not only can allow you to solve the problem, but it actually can also increase your LTV because you're now establishing a relationship. No matter what the case happens with this order, we're going to take care of you no matter what. That's something that you obviously don't want to happen, but when it does happen and it's inevitable, you can leverage that to add value to your relationship with your customer.
Yes, 100%. One of the things you said a minute ago resonated really well with me, which is basically like, how do you turn your loyal fans into more new fans, new customers? And like I draw a lot of parallels to that on the B2C side to what I do here at Malomo, which is partnerships. And like leveraging folks like yourself, Lewis, and the team at GrowthStable, right? Like we want to make sure that you have a fantastic experience with Porto's Bakery and any other clients that you bring on, not just right to make sure that those clients are well serviced and that they're seeing value from the platform, but that so we're the leaders in the order tracking space and send us every client that you get, right? Like we understand that you're a lot of times the go-to resource for tech evaluations, and anything that you recommend is likely going to at least be heavily considered, right? So for me, the goal, frankly, is to make sure that all of the leaders in the space like GrowthStable think about Malomo first when it comes to order tracking and see the value in it. And I don't think that it's not very much different in the super competitive e-commerce space right now, where there's a ton of food and beverage brands selling online, right? Like how does Porto stick out? And hopefully Malomo is one way in which they're able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that's definitely been a part of the process at the bakery. They've had great success and continue to have success with that partnership. And it's now something that we don't see we can ever go away from, right? It's like kind of I don't want to say no-brainer, but it's a no-brainer. It's something that we've now established as our standard. And the alternative of sending someone directly to a carrier page with no connection, we're just kind of hoping they're taken care of and everything goes fine. It's just something that we're not okay with the bakery and the other brands that I'm talking to and working with. Once they hear that, it clicks and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, no, that does make tremendous sense. Let's set that up and not look back.
Right.
Yeah, like Jack's out of the box, kind of. Like once you see it, it's like, I know when I started working here, I was like, I saw a page and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to like look at a carrier page again and be like, oh, that's okay, but I love that you make that point.
Yeah, it is. And you'll see it with brands that are on the smaller side, really getting ready to explode and grow, that they're understanding that that's something that most brands aren't using, that they're competing with. And so like you just said, right, when a customer gets used to it and then they get to another brand, they get sent directly to, a carrier page with like a out of the box email. They're like, ooh, that's not what I'm used to anymore. I've been taking care of that XYZ brand and now ABC showing me something a little bit different. I don't know my relationship is already deteriorating with that new brand. And so I think it's a must have for all brands, no matter the size.
Mhm.
Love it. We typically don't pitch Maloma very hard on these things, but I'm not adverse. I'll take it all day long. I also think that on a more sort of macro level, like the idea, let me take a step back. We always think about Malomo as a retention platform, right? Like the sole purpose of Malomo is to drive that second purchase, to keep customers in the funnel for as long as possible, and increase their LTV. Keep customers buying and coming back for more as long as possible, increase LTV. What we haven't really thought about, at least from a marketing standpoint, Mariah, as far as I know, is like how we turn this retention channel into an acquisition channel, which like makes me super pumped to just even say out loud.
I can see you're beaming like ear to ear.
But that's fascinating, right? Because everything that we've ever talked about is retention and growing LTV. We've not talked about how we bring new customers into the funnel, and likely have, similar to my role, right? When a partner recommends Malomo, the close rate goes way up. A lot of times the contract values go up. The sales cycles are way shorter. And I know that all of those same things apply to B2C as well. So Luis, would you any thoughts, feedback on that concept in turning the retention funnel into an acquisition channel?
Absolutely. I have a lot of thoughts on this. So
Let's dive in.
I think there's a couple options there that need to be considered from brands. And let me give some background on the idea. So essentially, the whole business and philosophy of like conversion rate optimization is, if a customer wants to purchase, we need to get out of their way so they can achieve that purchase, right? Don't make it an extra step. Don't make an extra click. Get them to where they want to be. You're not necessarily forcing their hand. You're kind of guiding them to where they already have the intent to be. I think the same thing comes with, a personalized tracking page and the acquisition idea, right? So if a customer is extremely thrilled, which we know through the stats that just the excitement and open rates through that process of the shipped email, out for delivery and then delivered, we know the customer is thrilled for the item, the order to arrive. In that excitement, when they open the package and they enjoy their product in however form they will, if they still are carrying that excitement, and when they were tracking the page, you suggested two options. You showed them the offering of your referral program so they can benefit from a word of mouth referral, and also other items that are either in that same category or different. So when they finally receive the product and that excitement is at its absolute peak, and they think, they have a conversation with a friend or family and they talk about this experience that they had, they now in their back of their head understand that, one, there's a referral program that they themselves can take advantage of. And two, let's say they, talk to someone who may not enjoy that exact product, but would love something separate or different. And you showed them that that different item exists with your brand from the personalized page. They now have it to suggest, right? They might say, oh, you don't like this product? Oh man, if they didn't know about the other product, the conversation would end there. But if they do know about the other offerings you may have, they can suggest those to their friend or family. And it's that natural word of mouth referral, but leveraging the information you provided at one of their peak excitement statuses to leverage that word of mouth so they can do exactly what they wanted to do in the first place. You're not forcing their hand. Again, you're just guiding them with the resources to do what they want to do, which is tell a friend and family how excited they are about the brand they just experienced. I don't think, well, for one, we've discussed, I don't think a lot of people are using a personalized tracking page to enhance their relationship with their customers. Like, I don't think that exists as much as it should be. But acquisition wise, those two opportunities are beyond extraordinary, and they could stack, right? If you can share a new category, a new item, and the referral program, someone might do exactly that. Refer someone to your brand with the new category or product in mind. And now you have a very warm lead or excited customer, new customer, to join your brand. And then now you have a flywheel. And that's the whole excitement of e-commerce. It's like you can get a systemized approach to feed these flywheels so that as you're doing the hard work to acquire in the competitive marketplaces, to continue to find new product and develop them, in the background, you've created these flywheels that keep feeding your brand to achieve that growth milestone that you've always had. It's a lot easier to manage than having to recreate the wheel every single time.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that it's like you're giving more knowledge to a customer without like about your brand without them having to do like any work. It's like you get it's just like a win-win. I love that.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed on Porto's tracking page is, to your point, Lewis, you talked about how like a lot of brands might think about this as increasing LTV by pushing product recommendations or sign up for our subscription program, but don't think about like, how do we just make sure that this customer is super well taken care of, especially if it's the first time, right? Like, what can we do to ensure they have a great experience so they come back for that super integral second purchase? And what I love about the Porto's page is like the first thing, like you offer all the same stuff. You offer other products, you offer refer a friend program and everything else. But you also, the first thing that you see when you go to track the order is baking instructions. So when that product arrives, you have the information you need right there to pop it in the oven or do whatever you need to do to have the best experience possible with that product that you just purchased. And that's really where it all starts, right? You can't get to refer a friend before you have the initial super positive experience that keeps them coming back for a second purchase. So yeah, I love that you took clearly a very holistic view to building out the transactional experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly holistic, like you said, because you do need, they've already purchased, and now you have to make sure they have everything they need to enjoy the food that they're being delivered. And it is a very seamless process, but there's times where you may lose instructions that are included in the order, or you lost that email. We want there to be no question about what you need to do to enjoy the food, because again, that peak excitement is something that's already built in. And when that food arrives, you want to eat it within the 30 minutes it takes to bake or less. If you're kind of fidgeting for instructions and you don't have it at that time, we want to make sure there's no opportunity for you to not have the resources you need. And then on top of that, we're pushing the, contact us if you have any questions. If something doesn't make sense in instructions, as maybe you misread it or we forgot something, you can understand in that situation. So there's no friction for you enjoying the amazing food you ordered. That's the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about like your preferred stack and how you figure out what tools to recommend to your clients. So that's a great segue. For the support app, do you use a software tool for that, or is it something?
Yeah, my favorite is Gorgeous.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, they're amazing. The integration with Shopify is spectacular, and essentially it's a win-win, right? You get to enhance the experience with the customer because of the features it has, and it also takes less of a toll for your CX team to answer those tickets. So to me, it's a win-win, and that's another no-brainer in the stack.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have an awesome Gorgeous integration where we send shipping data back to them so that when customers do submit a ticket asking where their order is or some sort of issue, the Gorgeous platform has all of the information they need from our end to troubleshoot. And we have like I don't know if Porto's has it set up yet, but we have like a chat widget that you can drop on the tracking pages as well. I'm curious, like just going a little bit deeper there. Obviously, you're wearing all of the e-com hats. So I want to ask about your preferred tech stack, but also how you evaluate technologies. And like, even when you were thinking about Malomo, like what were the things that you sort of wanted to make sure that we check the box on to make us the preferred solution?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, when looking for a tech stack partner to work with, because that's what it is, right? Every piece of platform or service is a partner in your brand. And so for me, the biggest factor is the customer support or tech support within the service or platform, because there's always going to be an issue that, every brand is unique in the sense that it has a different use case. And so you're going to kind of push the envelope on that service or the platform as you grow. Right, as you offer a feature of some type within your brand, the other services have to offer that to you in some sense. And so that's the biggest factor. The second is its ease of use for the customer if it's customer facing. If it's not, how easy is it to use for the team? Because again, you want to add value to yourself, your team, your brand, or the customer, depending on who's facing the platform. But you don't want it to be a heavy lift either, because then you kind of have to weigh the difference of it takes a lot of work, but we get a lot of value. And sometimes that doesn't always make sense. So for example, we always use Klaviyo. We're always using Shopify. We're always suggesting Gorgeous. We're always suggesting Malomo. Because they all work together, phenomenal. Each of those platforms, including yourselves, have great tech support. So, you're always it could always be user error as well. There's always a challenge. I forgot to click this. I forgot to unselect that. And the ability to resolve that relatively quickly and then have the education in words, hey, don't just click that, but here's why that setting does that thing. Opening your idea to other opportunities. That's the most important portion of deciding which service to use, because you're not always looking for the cheapest. You want something that's going to be a relationship, a partnership with your brand, especially if your goal is to continue to grow. You need to understand that that partner is going to support you with that growth.
Yeah, 100%. This is a topic that I'm really, really fascinated by, especially in the e-commerce space. So I came from like the enterprise space, which required like custom implementations, custom integrations. It was very hands-on, but also extremely costly. The difference here in the Shopify ecosystem is like there's 10,000 apps that are plug and play, right? Mm-hmm. You can go download an app for just about anything. The reality is that problem might be solved, might be a band-aid for the short term. But to your point, Lewis, like as you scale, you're going to need hands-on support. Like the technology is really only as good as the implementation and the ongoing support you get when you have issues or you need to troubleshoot something. And what I love about our approach, not to brag, this is much more a testament to our founders than to anybody else. But they came from the agency life. Like they built Malomo, the software, while running an e-commerce agency. So they saw firsthand the challenges of like the Shopify apps that were just product-led growth. Here it is, good luck. Versus what they were doing at their agency while they were building the platform, the super hands-on. Let's make sure that this is custom built for you and that you have everything you need from the software before we go like scale this thing. And we've maintained those sort of agency roots and that hands-on white glove support, even spanning to our agency partners, right? Because as like you at GrowthStable are getting familiar with Malomo, we want to make sure that you have everything you need to be properly enabled. And even after you are and you're running full implementations and ongoing support, you always have a dedicated resource with us, because while that, a VC looking at that could be like, oh, that's a little bit costly to have that human resource. It's changed the game in terms of like how we're able to properly support our clients compared to a lot of those other Shopify apps that are just that, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think on top of that, it makes a lot of sense with the agency background of the founders is the constant integration of new features, right? As an agency, you're constantly seeing a new challenge, whether you're speaking to a food brand, a clothing brand, a subscription brand, a one-off brand, small AOV, high AOV. Every approach is kind of based on the same, standard of best practices, but you got to tweak it, a little bit. And you guys are always talking about the new features that are rolling out. And it's the only way to have that confidence of like, wow, they are really looking out for the brands and the agency partners so that they can continue to implement a better service or a better approach to the customers. That's something that, like you're saying, not many apps are constantly pushing. And right. The ones that are, you can tell, are the ones that are growing like you guys, because it instills a level of confidence that I don't have to bug the tech team or the customer support team for XYZ feature. They're going to hear me out when I suggest one. And a lot of times they're already working on it and you have a short timeline to get to experience it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you noticing that. I think it's been a long time coming, but we've sort of embraced that founding story and background very heavily recently, and it's seems to resonate because it's very clear the difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious on the fulfillment side. That's really an area that most of our other agency partners don't touch. So, like, what is your take on fulfillment? What do brands need to consider when evaluating different fulfillment partners? And are there one or two that you're like, if you have fulfillment challenges, I highly recommend you check out this solution.
Totally. At the bakery, when we built it out, we did the fulfillment ourselves. So we didn't use a partner, and I haven't really experienced the partners just yet. The brands I'm working with are shipping the orders out on their own, which is super exciting. So my partner there is not the actual 3PL, but the system they use, which is ShipStation. It's what I push and recommend to my clients and the brands that we work with. And because of that, or because of ShipStation, we have a lot of customization that you can use, right? And every product that a brand is shipping could have a different use case, not only the dimensions and the weight and kind of the basics of fulfillment, but when does it need to be shipped? How quickly does it need to be shipped? Is there a product that needs to get there in 2 days? Is there a product that needs to get there in 5 days, right? The standard shipping. And that's the difference that allows you to manipulate the enhancement of a customer relationship, because sometimes you can get an order there in 2 days when it's not always recommended, but maybe a customer says they have a wedding or a big event or something that need to get their order, expedited. You have the opportunity when you're handling the shipment for yourself. And within ShipStation, there's so many customizations for the process that you yourself can build, right? Just like we were speaking, every scenario with growth, you enter a new challenge to acquire that milestone, and fulfillment's no different, right? You kind of have to adjust the way you're doing things. Maybe you're shipping 100 orders a day, and then you grow to 1,000 orders a day. Maybe you're running one team of fulfillment, and now you need two teams to help you fulfill. Maybe you have a handful of different carriers. Maybe you have one carrier. There's so many differences that need to be approached, and I think that's part of the excitement. It's kind of owning the entire relationship with your customer, not only the communication through a personalized tracking page or through Klaviyo to continue to speak with them, or Gorgeous to handle any questions or concerns, but literally, how do you get the product in your customer's hands? Doing so is really exciting. I know there's brands that handle or work with a great amount of 3PLs that have great services, and being integrated with the best 3PLs that I've seen means you have great communication, understanding of where that package is, where is the status, how quickly is it really going to get out, and then how do you communicate that to your customer, from the standard customer who's not really in a rush and everything is easy peasy, or if you have to transfer to someone who has a critical request where they need to get it for, maybe they forgot to order a gift, they need to get there next day. Having the levers to pull to execute that commitment you make to your customer really helps you stand out as a brand.
I love that analogy of like having levers to pull to have that flexibility and to like comfort or like to like step up or fulfill those expectations with fulfillment, because I know like fulfillment is something that as a marketer like I don't think a ton about, except for this podcast, which is really exciting when we get to talk to experts like yourself, Luis, who is like dealing with all these problems on the day to day. And it's so interesting to me that like thinking through, I guess, of when you're smaller, you have more options, I think, for that flexibility, and then how to properly scale that so that you don't lose that flexibility while you're growing and like having more needs for fulfillment is super interesting. Like, do you see with when is it kind of like a catch-all, or is there still like that balance when if you're scaling a brand, you can still have that like flexibility in your fulfillment? Or is it kind of like you see like time and time again when you are scaling, you lose just traditionally like because of communication and bigger teams and all that, like it does, tend to have less of that flexibility? What would you say?
It's definitely more challenging, right? Just the nature, like you mentioned, the economies of a larger team become more challenging. But the exciting part is when you're in that smaller stage as a brand, if you end up doing fulfillment on your own, you get to establish the standard of your brand and how they approach the fulfillment portion of your business. So when you get to that growth and there is a ton of use cases for 3PLs. I'm not speaking against it. If you need to partner with a 3PL where maybe you do your fulfillment, if you're on the West Coast and 3PL may help you with the East Coast or all the nation or even global, you now have established your standard. So when you're speaking to these companies, you get to say, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, Z, and this is how we do things. And you're going to find that 3PL says, oh, absolutely, we agree. And actually, that one idea you mentioned, we're adding on this feature. Have you thought about this? And maybe they're thinking of something you haven't, because they are the expert in that field, and it allows you to enter those conversations where you're not just entering blind and saying, hey, I simply need to hold this, ship this, and I'll give you the address. But in essence, you get to give them, here's our playbook, because fulfillment is a cornerstone to the relationship we build with our relationships, and we want you to be a partner in establishing that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Lewis, I want to ask you about the holidays, but before I want to make sure that our listeners know, can you talk a little bit about like the verticals that you serve? Are you specific to the food and beverage space, or what sort of merchants on the e-commerce end do you work with?
Yeah, all types of merchants. I'm just an e-com nerd, and the team likes to support everyone. Every new challenge is exciting, and in most cases, we could take something from maybe a food vertical and apply it to an apparel vertical, or a clothing, like a bedding vertical is something that we're speaking to now, where they're having challenges, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know. We've encountered that with things such as the food vertical, and it's less about the vertical from us and more about like the use case. So for example, is it something that is absolutely critical for an event, right? At the bakery, it's why we add so much attention at the bakeries themselves in LA, but also on the e-commerce division. When you order a cake from us and it's going to a birthday or some type of celebration, we don't have a second chance. Like, it needs to get there on that day so you can enjoy it for that celebration or birthday. That type of focus on customer support and delivery and communication gets applied to something like, an apparel vertical that's ordering something as a gift, right? They may not think so. They might just think, oh, it's go get there in 5 days. But we kind of bring that level of like, hey, no, a customer ordered this, they need to get it, and or you need to communicate why there might be a challenge and how you resolve it. So those kind of practices against those types of use cases really apply to all verticals. And we just get excited when we find a new vertical that someone's like, hey, we have these challenges. We're like, oh, we've approached those from, maybe an apparel or food, but maybe it's like an automotive or some type of equipment that we're like, hey, this is exciting. We get to do this for a different approach, learn their different use cases, and then apply our best practices to solve them.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's very cool to think about like learnings from one vertical applying to another, even if they have absolutely nothing to do, like bedding and baking.
Yeah, exactly.
Although cookies in bed, not a horrible combo.
Not a horrible combination. That's a winning combination.
I'm curious, before we get into holidays, are there any verticals that you're like, man, this one in particular right now is really feeling the heat?
Yeah, I don't know. Not necessarily.
Yeah,
I think everyone's challenged with the marketplace for acquisition, but like we spoke earlier, the brands are still spending money, right? So that hasn't stopped.
Right.
Now, is that per dollar as effective as it was in the past? Maybe not for not everyone. Will it change? I'm sure it will. It's a marketplace, and the economy is a marketplace. Things will change and get better. But in that meantime, the brands that have not stopped or even slowed down, maybe even spending more, are the ones that make the most of their lifetime value, right? That know their data, that aren't just saying, hey, I think we could spend $20 on an acquisition. And then when it becomes 22, they're like, no, we have to pull back until it hits $20 again. The brands that know, we would love $20. That's a nice target, but technically we make money up until 30. Yeah. In that gray area, they're stepping on that pedal because people are pulling out, or brands are pulling out with their budget and trying to find another opportunity. We're like, hey, this still works for us because we know our data. And that's truly the only way to have a systemized approach to growth, because if not, you're just guessing. Or the kind of like the biggest challenge that I've seen some brands is they hit like a TikTok virality, or they have a tremendous amount of coverage in PR for some awesome reason, and all that's great. But it's kind of like that bear hug where it's awesome at first and then it's squeezing so tight. Like, hey, now we've kind of structured our business on that traffic. When we don't have that traffic at that low cost, how do we do it? How do we continue to move forward? The flywheel is not necessarily a flywheel. It's kind of a one-off, and you have to recreate that wheel every time, which isn't sustainable. So I think everyone's kind of feeling the heat, but the brands that have created that understanding of their data and know how to structure their LTV are the ones that aren't feeling it as much.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and I think a lot of the principles, like you mentioned, Lewis, that we talked about earlier, apply directly to this, right? It's like, yeah, we can go up to 30 on ad spend, not just because we know that we'll get that back, but we're super confident that we'll get them to the third purchase, right?
Yeah,
that will lead to profitability from this newly acquired customer. And here are the things that we're doing to get them there, right? On the retention strategy side, here's the spend, and here's where we actually start to see that revenue. So to your point, I think the brands who have the data visibility is absolutely crucial. Love that. So tell us what you're doing to prep for the holidays in terms of from the agency perspective, and what you advise based on that brands do ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then the holidays.
absolutely. So my kind of approach to the holidays is, if almost like studying in college, right, or in school, if you're not ready the day of the test, like just prepare to do your best. And with brands, the way I kind of approach that is, if you don't feel like your conversion rate is the best it can be, you don't have much time to kind of finalize that, because if you keep tinkering with your website, you may have a critical error, and that error could cause a giant loss for your sales. So I like to, it's October 25th today. We're getting pretty close to that mark. I don't like to do too much work on stores after November. I kind of just try to get ready to put out all the fires that you need to. And if you don't have too many moving pieces with a constant integration of new ideas or new features, new services, new platforms, you have a better chance to put out those fires. And so for me, as long as you aren't integrating any new moving pieces, A/B tests, etc., start in November, kind of hunker down and get ready for that traffic. And once that traffic comes, make the most out of it and take any piece that you think you could have done better as a learning experience for the new year, because you're really putting yourself at risk if you have too many moving parts at, arguably the most critical part of the year.
Yeah, that's a fantastic mindset, I think. I know, the way we see it is a lot of brands are scrambling right now. We obviously expect our business to slow in November and December, in terms of bringing on new merchants to Malomo. But realistically, and I think that makes sense based on what you said, right? But like, realistically, we should be doing everything we can to make sure that they're prepared, right? Well ahead of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Not, in an ideal world, we would have testing all completed and final approvals for the new experience that they're going to launch, just to make sure that, all of the money that they spent on these newly acquired users convert to that second purchase, because they have the correct customer experience stack in place after those newly acquired customers buy for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And conversing with new brands in the new year, because they probably either knew they wish they could have something like Malomo, or they didn't think about it. And when you have the volume of traffic against an opportunity like Malomo personalized tracking page, it's really eye-opening if you haven't thought about it yet.
Yeah. Mariah, you got something?
I was just gonna agree, but I was holding out because I was waiting to see if you were gonna comment, Noah. But I love that you kind of gave that perspective of, or that analogy of like holidays and like a test or something, of like, if even if you're not prepped or you didn't get everything that you wanted done right away, like when November hits, I love that you said like you can still have wins and learnings from it anyways. I feel like there's a lot of pressure to have everything perfect, and I put air quotes around perfect, meaning like like there's just, even like from our side of things, it's like, how can we best prep, like Noah said, how can we best prep our customers to have success during Black Friday, Cyber Monday? And there's all these pieces of content, like everything around it, right? Like this is part of that content of like advice sharing of like how can it be like perfect. Meanwhile, in reality, you're like never gonna have a perfect like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, right? Like it is so it is very like hyped up. So I think it's like comforting kind of to hear that even if you had all these goals and ambitions that, timeline, it just didn't work out, you can still hit those. That's the part that I love that analogy right there.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. No, you can ask your question now.
I'm
As I
just
was
going to
hesitating.
wrap us up. We're coming to time. This has
Okay.
been incredible. Lewis, thank you so much. We like to end by asking, kind of back on the personal side, but related to business. What is one tip that's helped you throughout your career? And this can be anything from like whether it's advice to other agencies, advice to the e-com market, or just general career advice. What would you attribute your awesome success to so far?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm most excited about and what worked out really well for me in my past is being very democratic with ideas, in the sense that all ideas are good ideas as long as they don't go directly against your brand or kind of like your personal way of life. Because the coolest part of e-commerce and with life, you have so many opportunities to test things, and A/B tests are my favorite part of e-commerce because we can take everyone's idea, and instead of being in a room and arguing or discussing who's right, we can just sit in a room, come up with ideas, make sure they don't go against our brand awareness or brand guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
and deploy them as an A/B test, add some statistical significance, and now you know what the winner is. And some of the winners that built out, when I was at the bakery, at Porto's Bakery, or with the brands I'm working with now, are ideas that we thought, hey, they're not bad ideas, but we don't think they're going to be the best. And the customers show you that you're actually wrong, and they know what's best. And there you can leave with confidence that that is the best decision, and you continue to move on and reiterate. So trying all ideas as long as they don't go directly against your own brand guideline or personal guideline, and seeing which one wins, because you never know what could work out the best.
Awesome. Yeah, love that answer. Test, test, test is what I
Yep.
heard. Uh, I think sometimes like I have this theory that like speaking in absolutes is just, or having like an absolute mindset is very limiting in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So yeah, being open to new ideas and even if there are things that you fundamentally don't agree with, being able to test them and see the data behind them, which has been made easier by newer technology, is great advice, man. Thank you so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it. Happy we got Porto's live. Page looks great. Makes me hungry. And looking forward to working much more closely with you as you grow out the business at GrowthStable.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you.